Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to our session. So today's topic is called making a wasiyah. What that means in English is making a will. So I have Brother Lotfi with me. Assalamu alaikum, Brother Lotfi.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Good to see you once again. So this is a very important topic which we're going to speak about. So I'm going to ask you some questions if you can kindly help us to understand. So can you explain what wasiyah is in Islam?
Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa salli Allahumma wa barik ala afdal nabiyyina wal mursaleen Muhammad bin Abdullah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. Wa ba'd. Wasiyah in Islam means making a will before you die. In other words, a gift that you grant to someone while you're alive and they can't receive it until you die.
Right.
I repeat, a gift that you give to someone, or a benefit or a wealth or anything similar to that, you gift it to someone and you tell them you will only have it, you will only possess it after I die.
Sure.
That's what a wasiyah is in Islam.
Now, is wasiyah compulsory or is it optional?
Making a wasiyah or making a will in Islam can be optional and can be compulsory. Allah in Surah Al-Baqarah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, كتب عليكم إذا حضر أحدكم الموت إن ترك خيرا الوصية للوالدين والأقربين. If one of you is about to die and he has wealth or property, okay, al-wasiyah, he needs to make a will for his parents or his relatives. This is a prescription from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah also mentioned, when he spoke about the rules of inheritance in Surah An-Nisa, he says, مِن بَعْدِ وَصِيَّةٍ يُوصِي بِهَا أَوْ دَيْنٍ. Inheritance will be divided to the family members after what? After the will of the person dying, or the person who died, is given to its possessors. And the debt is paid. Okay? The debt of the person who died is paid and his will is fulfilled. At that time you can divide his wealth for his heirs. Is that clear?
So it's basically after debt. So if somebody had, let's say, £50,000, that £50,000 would have to be paid, and then afterwards, whatever's left over,
it goes to the heirs.
Okay.
Inheritors. Okay?
Got you.
So the hukm of wasiyah in Islam, it can be wajib and it can be sunnah. It can be compulsory and it can be optional. The Prophet of Islam sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says in Sahih Bukhari and Muslim, reported by Abdullah ibn Umar, may Allah be pleased with him, he says, ما حق امرئ مسلم يبيت ليلتين وله شيء يوصي فيه إلا ووصيته عند رأسه أو مكتوبة عنده. It is not permissible for a Muslim to spend 2 nights while he has some wealth or some property, okay, that he needs to make a will for. Okay, it is not permissible for a Muslim to spend 2 nights while he has what? A property, and this property he needs to make a will for it.
Right.
Except that he has to have his will written with him at all times. It means you should not spend 2 nights without your will being written.
Okay, got you.
Because a will needs to be renewed often. Today you're a millionaire, maybe next year you're what? You're a billionaire. Do you understand? Today you're poor, tomorrow you're rich. So you need to renew your will and what you want and what you don't want, and so on and so forth.
Sure.
So from this hadith we understand that a wise Muslim should revive the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ and should not neglect this sunnah.
Sure.
And this sunnah, as we mentioned earlier, it can be compulsory and it can be optional.
Right.
When can it be compulsory? Please, brothers and sisters, listen carefully. he has to make a will if he has debt. You owe money to someone. You need to clarify that for your family or your lawyer. You write it down, obviously, with witnesses in a legal way. So and so, I owe him this amount of money, or whatever, this amount of products, or so on and so. You have to write it, because if you die, people will claim their debt, and will be like a conflict between your family and them. You have no evidence.
Sure.
You're just claiming it, but our father did not leave any will, did not say anything. And that will be on your neck, because you failed to make a will. You failed to pay your debt. Or business transaction. You're a trader, and often traders have these transactions, unpaid, paid, to be paid, due to be paid. So you have to write that often. That's why the Prophet says, no 2 nights should pass you except you have written it and it's next to your head in one riwayah.
And updating it all the time.
Yes, updating it as often as you can.
Sure.
Especially if you are someone who's a trader or a businessman or anything like that. Okay?
Sure.
So if it's debt, then it is compulsory to make a will.
Right.
If you're a businessman, then it is compulsory. What are your products? What are the products you are selling for other companies? Clarify the calculations and the transactions and whatever it is. Clarify that in your will. Well, the wealthier you are, the more you need a lawyer. Do it professionally. But if you're not at that level, then you don't need a lawyer. You just need an agent or someone, an official from someone who works for the government. Or there's many different ways you can do it. Even with Islamic centers and Islamic charities, they offer this service. Walillahi alhamd.
Sure.
They
And they're legal as well.
Yeah, and the good thing in the UK, you can do it according to the Islamic Sharia within the boundaries of the British law.
Got you. Right.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It doesn't happen in every country like that, in non-Muslim countries. So the British system is allowing us to have our wills and our inheritance according to the Sharia law, just like marriage and divorce and so on and so forth. Take advantage of this.
Sure.
It might not last for long.
Yeah.
We don't know. Today, is a democratic country, they allow you to practice your religion freely to a certain limit. Tomorrow it might not be. Tomorrow maybe Catholic or Church of England will rule the UK, and they will disallow any kind of religious movements.
Sure.
So since it is a secular country, then take advantage of that. Practice Islam freely and revive the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Though we want it to be an Islamic country, but it's
understandable.
But Muslims should be wise. Do you understand? Yeah.
Can you mention the optional part as well?
Yeah, but let me clarify more compulsory
100%,
wasiyah that you need to make. If you did not make a hajj for whatever reason it is, then you need to write it down. And you had enough wealth and enough physicality, I mean you were fit enough, for some reason you didn't. You need to write the wasiyah. My son, my friend, my whatever, make hajj on my behalf using my wealth. Using my wealth. Okay? If you had zakat to be paid and you didn't pay it, or you skipped paying zakat for I don't know how many years, then you need to write that down. If you fear the meeting of Allah. But lots of people die without caring about any of this, unfortunately. But they will be in trouble with Allah on the Day of Judgment. So the rights of Allah before any rights.
Sure.
Hajj, zakat, debt. One important thing is your funeral too. The expenses of the funeral should be from your wealth, if you left wealth.
Sure.
Before your heirs divide your wealth, they should take aside all these compulsory expenses. Whether your hajj, if you didn't do hajj at all and you were able to do that while you were alive, okay? Your zakat, your debt, and your funeral. It costs thousands of pounds to have a burial here in the UK. So they need to take that off, and then whatever is left after this, it's to be divided to his heirs, to his family members, which are very close to him, his wife, his parents, his children, and so on and so forth. Okay? So funeral expenses is very, very important. That's compulsory. And that's compulsory. So this kind of will is compulsory. You need to make it. You need to write it down. Okay? The other optional will is, or the optional will is the one that is recommended. For example, you can write, I want to buy a masjid. This is when you are fit enough and you're not in your bed dying. Let's say you write the will and you say, when I die, I want to give this amount of money to this masjid, to this Islamic center, to this charity organization. You have the right to give all your money if you want, but give it at that time. But if you want to make it as a will, then you can't give more than 1/3.
Okay.
No more than 1/3. Am I clear?
Yes.
So, because Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, he was a wealthy man, radiyallahu anhu wa ardah. Once he was in his bed, he was sick, very sick, and the Prophet came to see him and he asked him, he said, "Oh, the Messenger of Allah, I am a wealthy man and I only have one daughter to inherit me. Should I give 2/3 of my wealth as a will, as a wasiyah, and 1/3 for my daughter?" The Prophet said to him, "No, too much." He said to him, "What about half of my wealth?" The Prophet ﷺ said, "No, that's too much." He says, "What about 1/3 of my wealth, O the Messenger of Allah?" He says, "الثلث والثلث كثير." ثلث والثلث كثير. 1/3 and 1/3 is allowed, but it's too much. And then he advised him, he said, "It is better for you to leave your family wealthy enough than going and begging people after your death. Because you can give all your wealth as a wasiyah when you are fit enough, like gift, you can give it all, and you leave your family members what? Penniless. Or you leave them money, but not enough to make them struggle. Do you understand? So, وَآتِ ذَا الْقُرْبَ حَقَّهُ. Quran starts with your relatives, starting with your wife, with your son, with your daughter, parents, and so on and so forth. Yeah, start with them, and leave some for charity, 1/3 for charity. But if you want to give all your wealth, as a gift at that time, give it, then nobody can stop you. But it is highly disliked to give all your wealth and to remain with nothing at all or a little, because in Islam you should not make yourself struggle if it was in your hands. Do you understand? So it means you can give as much as you want as a gift, no problem.
Sure.
But not as a wasiyah, specifically when you are in your bed to die.
Right.
Do you understand?
Okay. Can I, if you have...
And you can't make a will. You can't, for example, you have a daughter or a son. You can't say, I leave for this specific son or this specific daughter this amount of wealth or property.
So you can't pick and choose.
No.
Yeah.
No heirs. No heirs. A will is not for heirs. Heirs, inheritance from your family, they have their rights Islamically, whether you like it or not. If you die, automatically the Sharia will give them their rights. But a wasiyah should be for someone who's not entitled for your inheritance. Whether far family members, like cousins, aunties, do you understand? Or any charities, or anyone, to be honest with you. Do you understand?
Sure.
So this is the wasiyah that is optional and highly recommended. And yeah.
Sure. So can you explain to us, I know you've gone over quite a few things that wasiyah needs to have, but the conditions of a wasiyah, can you list us some conditions of a wasiyah, how it should be in chronological order?
Number one, it has to be according to the Islamic Sharia.
Sure.
It has to be according to the Islamic Sharia. Number two, you cannot leave a wasiyah, you cannot make a will that is a disobedience to Allah. For example, I want this part of 1/3 of my wealth to be spent in this kind of nightclub.
Right.
Or in this kind of haram, whatever activity it is. They should not do this wasiyah for you.
Right.
They should not obey you in here. You die, we will know what to do it. We'll do it in charity.
Yeah.
Okay? So, لا طاعة المخلوق في معصية الخالق. You cannot obey the creation in order to disobey the creator. Okay? So these are one of the conditions. According to the Sharia, you don't fulfill the will of someone who left a will based on disobedience. Number two, al-Musi, the one who makes a will, he has to be baligh, reached the age of puberty. He has to be aqil, sane.
Yeah.
Okay? And he has to be aqil, he has to be hur, he's not enslaved.
Right.
And most importantly, he has to be the pure possessor of that wealth or property. You cannot make a will on behalf of someone's wealth. You need to, you're giving something, it has to be yours. This wasiyah you're making, this wealth you're giving after you die,
Yeah.
it has to be a possession, a complete possession.
Sure.
Okay? So these are the main conditions for the person to make a will. Yeah.
Can I ask you a question that's not on my list? What if?
And obviously the wasiyah cannot be given to the person that is meant to be given to, except after the person dies.
Okay, got you.
Because otherwise it will be a gift, not a will. Do you understand?
Right, right.
He has to die so he can claim that will. Yes.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a question that's not on my list. What if the will, the person who's coming from, the inheritance amount is haram?
What if his wealth is haram?
Yeah.
Okay, in here we have to detail it, okay?
Sure.
If he stole the money and we know where he stole it from, then there is no heirs to inherit that wealth. It needs to be given to that, to where it belongs, okay? So if he stole it, then it has to be given back, okay? If he robbed it or anything similar to that, it needs to be given back to where it really belongs, okay? If we had evidence that belongs to so and so,
Sure.
because it's not his. Remember, one of the conditions, it's got to be his full possession. But if it was haram wealth from different sources, for example, he indulged himself in riba, or he sold haram items.
Yeah.
When he had a shop, he sold unhalal meat or wine or whatever, then it is his wealth. It is his wealth. The sin is with him, okay? But his heirs have every right to inherit that wealth. Is that clear?
Yes, it is.
Inherit it, and it does not become haram for them. It's recommended for them to purify it if they want to do so, like giving a charity from it, do you understand? To perfectly purify it and give charity on behalf of the person who died. Maybe Allah will forgive him. Sure. And yes, so that's how it is. Is that understood?
Yes, yes. Because there are cases where you know some parents or forefathers, whatever, they've inherited, they've made money from fraud or from drug dealing and stuff like that.
So drug dealings and fraud, and if you don't know where this money belongs to, like you didn't take it, you didn't oppress people and take it from them, then technically it's your money because the person who bought drugs from you, he did it willingly. Do you understand? When you went to the bank and you've done some usury transaction, you and the banker were happy to sign that contract. So the money automatically became yours, even if it was haram. That's something between you and Allah. But the money itself is haram, but it belongs to you.
Got you. I understand.
Is that clear?
Okay, no, 100%.
So your heirs can inherit it and there's no sin on them.
Sure.
Because that money, if it's not taken by them, who will take it?
But I mean, obviously, what they want to do afterwards, say, I don't want this money because it's haram.
If they don't want, if they don't want, then they can disclaim it and they can just...
We'll give it away to charity, right?
No, it doesn't go to charity. Unless they receive it themselves and it becomes theirs, at that time they're free to do with it whatever they want. But if one of them steps down, that percentage of wealth, it will add to one of the heirs. Do you understand?
All right, so go
yes,
else, right.
Because one of them stepped down. Do you understand? So that percentage that was meant to be given to him, because he disclaimed and he said, I don't want it, it will go to one of the heirs. Unless he takes it, it becomes his, and then he does with it whatever he wants.
Fine. Okay, so when can one do a wasiyah? Is there a certain time? I mean, you mentioned like it should be certain conditions, but when one can do a wasiyah?
You should do it as often as you can, to be honest with you. As often as you can, you make a wasiyah. We had the hadith of the Prophet. You shouldn't spend 2 nights without your wasiyah is written next to you.
Right. Always updated.
Yeah, always updated. Now, you keep it in your computer and your data. And if I told you, the wealthier, the more property you have, the more complications you have, the more need for a lawyer will be. Do you understand?
Sure.
Or a professional or someone that has whatever the stamp of the government or an official person.
Sure. So What are the boundaries of a wasiyah? I mean, you mentioned about the 1/3, but is there like a monetary amount? Say, for example, I had £1 million, right? How should that be split up? Is there any boundaries? Let's say if I had £1 billion,
Yeah.
what are the boundaries in that?
You can't give more than third in your will.
Sure.
You can't. 1/3 and it's too much, to be honest with you, as the Prophet says.
Yes. Okay. That's.
But if you want to give it as a gift, but it's got to be given not after you die, in your life, then it's your money. You do whatever you want with it.
Okay, understand. So I'm going to ask you a question, and it's quite a relevant question because we see a lot of this on social media. We see a lot of this, brothers and sisters trying to raise money for funerals. As you mentioned previously, that one should actually technically pay for their own funeral themselves from their will.
If they have the money,
If they have the money. Now, in the case where somebody has enough money, let's say I die and then I have 10 grand in my bank account, and then my friends, family, they start raising money for me online, right? Through like Launch Good or whatever it is. Is that permissible?
Well, we mentioned earlier that one of the compulsory wasiyah that you need to have is your burial. Especially, remind me to come back to your exact question because I remembered something.
Yeah.
Especially if you were married to someone who's not a Muslim.
Right.
We know some Muslims marry kitabiyat, Christian women or Jewish women, which is permissible in Islam to marry for a Muslim man with certain conditions. We discussed them already. And we know the Jewish people in their tradition, in their religion, they do the proper burial, very similar to the Islamic one. As well as most Christians, but some Christians have other options, cremation, like the Church of England, and it's authorized by the British law too.
Right.
Okay, so I know a brother. It's not that I know him personally. I heard of him because I know a company that works with with Muslims, burials, and so on and so forth. They told me this story. 2 years ago in Manchester, he's a Muslim brother. He was married to an English Christian woman who follows the Church of England. When he died, he failed to write a will before he died.
Right.
He did not write what? A will.
Yeah.
She burned him into ashes. She refused to give him to the Muslim community to bury him Islamically. And they challenged her in the court and they failed. Legally they failed. She won the battle. And they had to beg her to pray his janazah on his ashes and then give it back to her.
Right.
That is very sad. That is very sad. No Muslim would want to be burnt into ashes or cremated. This is what the Buddhists and the Hindus do. This is against our religion. Okay, this is dishonoring a human being according to Islam.
Sure.
So you need to clarify. I advise every brother out there who's married to a non-Muslim person, even if she is what? A Christian. She can do that. And often people do that here in the UK because it's the cheapest way for burying someone is to cremate him. Yeah, it's cheaper and it's quicker. And you know what? Even if you died somewhere and the government could not find out your identity, there were no traces of who you are as a person. And it can happen. Yeah. No fingerprints, no traces, no documentations on you. They can't keep you in the hospital for how long? Because it costs them money. And we know how much they care about money in here.
Yeah.
If there is no one claiming you, if there is no one reporting you're missing, after maybe a week or two, the easiest option and the quickest and the cheapest is what? To cremate you into ashes. Yeah. If we know some brothers, they isolate themselves from Muslim communities. They live in places, in towns, where there is no masjid, where there is no halal shop, where there is no Muslim person you see on the street. And then when you die, what do you expect?
Yeah.
Janazah?
No.
But there's a small chance of that, do you understand?
Yeah.
Never disconnect yourself. Islam always came encouraging us and obliging us, to be honest with you, to be united and to be together, jama'ah, to be together as a community, do you understand? Unity, helping one another. Walillahi alhamd. But if you isolate yourself and you live amongst the kuffar and you refuse to be around the Muslims, then you're risking a risk, to be honest with you. You're risking
Yeah.
a big risk. You might be cremated. Your wealth, who will take your wealth? Who will possess your whatever you leave behind you? Do you understand?
Yeah.
Your children, and even if you have children, and I forgot to mention that, in your will, if you have children with a non-Muslim person, or you are a single parent, Muslim single parent, and you have children, you have to write who will look after your children after you die. You don't want them to be adopted by people of no faith. Of no faith, because they have no aunties, they have no grandma, nobody will claim them. Do you understand? The easiest, the first one that would come and offers and provides a safe place for them, regardless what their faith or culture is, they would give it. The government or the social service will give your children, and you don't want your children to be given to a non-Muslim family.
Sure.
And brought up. And so, in your will, you have to write that if you were a single parent or you were a small Muslim family living in a bigger non-Muslim community, write a will.
Yeah.
Write a will that I want my children to be adopted by a Muslim family, to be
Sure.
brought up Islamically. You write a will, number one, for your own safety with Allah. What happens to your children or to your will that you made after, it's the responsibility of those who cross the boundaries. Because the ayah I mentioned earlier, فَمَنْ بَدَّلَهُ بَعْدَمَا سَمِعَهُ فَإِنَّمَا إِثْمُهُ عَلَى الَّذِينَ يُبَدِّلُونَهُ إِنَّ اللَّهَ سَمِيعٌ عَلِيمٌ. Whoever changes or corrupts the will after they hear it, then the sin will be on those who corrupted it. Right. Indeed, Allah is all hearing and all knowing. Yeah. Allah did not mention this ayah for nothing, because He knows there is people who will cross the boundaries. You left your will, you clarified it very well. You've done it according to the Islamic teaching. But one of your sons, or one of your wives, or one of your family members, or one of the politicians, or one of the council members, whatever, corrupted this will for whatever interest they have, yeah? Then you've done your bit with Allah. Do you understand?
100%.
So you've got to do your bit with Allah. And number two, you don't want to leave children, or you don't want to leave your wealth given to the wrong people. Do you understand?
Sure.
So please write a will. If you live as a single parent and you're bringing up children, I want this and I want that, to be adopted by their auntie or by their cousin or a person that you choose and you think is most suitable to look after them. If there is no one, please write it's Islamically, and maybe Allah will. Do you understand? It's very important.
Can we talk about divisions? I know in terms of the will, let's say, for example, you have one son, two sons, and two daughters. Okay, father passes away. Is it distributed equally to all of them?
No. للذكر مثل حظ الأنثيين. Males will have twice as girls.
Okay.
Okay.
So.
And it all depends. Half brothers. Do you understand? It's quite complicated. But you just have to study and go in details. Maybe we do another session.
Inshallah. I was going to say, because there are some cases in a kind of more liberal country where sometimes the father may leave the wife and go marry elsewhere, and he has offspring, 6, 7.
They all have rights.
Yeah.
What matters is the father.
Yeah.
Are they from the father?
Yes.
From the same father? Then they have their share equally. Do you understand?
Sure.
If their father is one, their share is equally according to Islam.
Right.
Do you understand?
Understood. Yeah. Excellent.
If the father dies, obviously.
Yeah. So no matter if he leaves and goes somewhere else, and then he leaves like 15 children, then obviously they all have that right.
Islamically, they have right. They're his children.
Equally.
If there is witnesses that are his children, then they're his children. Sharia law, the hakim, the wali al-amr, the ruler, Muslim ruler, should divide it according to the Sharia. Sure. Even if he denied the inheritance of some of his sons, it's not his wealth.
So in a kind of really English terminology, right, will, it's more of like an insurance policy for your family, correct? Because, you know, as some may say, you die and you take out life insurance. And let's say if I died today, I'm not saying my wife will do, but, you know, some people say you get £50,000 if your partner dies, right? This is a safe security for your family, correct? To say that, you know, this is actually...
Yeah, but life insurance in Islam is not allowed.
Sure.
It's haram. It's strictly haram.
Right.
All insurances are... let me be...
Please, because...
All insurances in Islam is haram. All taxes in Islam are haram.
Right.
Dara'ib, haram. Maybe in certain cases, with certain circumstances, certain taxes can be allowed if there is a maslaha benefit. benefit. But generally speaking, strictly haram. Insurance for your mobile phone, for your car, for your house, for your life, for whatever it is. All of these are haram. The principle in Islam, you cannot pay for a service that does not give you anything in return except in a way of gambling. Because when you pay insurance, I know that's a different story.
Yeah, yeah.
We're obliged to pay car insurance. We're obliged to pay many insurances in our society today, whether Muslims or non-Muslim countries. This is necessity. In here, you're sinless. Do you understand? In here, Allah will not hold you accountable, but will hold the rulers accountable for launching these rules which Allah Himself did not establish for humanity. Do you understand?
Right.
So you're obliged. You're allowed to have these insurances because you're obliged, like a bank account. There is no bank here in the UK, or not even in Muslim countries, to be honest with you. In Muslim countries, 99.9% of banks there are interest-based.
Yes.
Maybe a very small percentage, if there is. I don't believe there is, to be honest with you. Allahu A'lam. But I know there is one or two maybe, or something like that. Yeah. But we're obliged to have bank accounts with them.
Sure.
Where would you keep your savings? If you don't have a bank account, you can't get a job today.
Yeah.
It's all about bank statements, the government controlling and watching you, what you're doing, what you're earning, what you're spending, what your income, your outcome. Do you understand? If you have no bank account, you have no work.
Yeah.
You have nothing coming to you. So we're obliged to sign contracts for bank accounts, okay, with these banks which are haram.
Sure.
We have no choice. We live in a society like that. So this is what we call ad-darurat tubih al-mahdhurat. Necessity will allow you to have something that is impermissible in Islam. For example, you're in the middle of nowhere and there is no food and you're starving to death, and what do you call that? Pork is given to you.
Yeah.
You're allowed to eat.
Right.
You're allowed to eat an amount that is sufficient for you to
stay alive,
to avoid dying.
Okay. Yeah.
Do you understand? That's in the Quran. That's in the Quran.
Right.
Okay. Same with insurances. Same with it. But in reality, the principle in Islam, the haram. What about the taxes, VAT and this and that? All of them are haram in Islam. Because you're paying, yeah, they tell you we're paying you back in a different way, do you understand? Yeah, maybe in certain ways, but generally speaking, you're not paying me back the way you should be. You're just taking 20% of my monthly wage, and that's a huge amount of money.
It is,
a huge amount of money. But that's the system, do you understand? But Islamically, they call it mix. Mix, this charging people taxes for no service in return, or that is like corruption in Islam.
Okay. I know we went a little bit off topic.
Well, what was your question?
My question was about I think it started with a funeral, but that's absolutely fine because you've explained it in terms of, should we pay for our own funeral? And also, I was talking about divisions, but I think generally, definitely, it's a case where making a will is something we need to do for our children, for our offspring, for our siblings. If that case is, the way I look at it, it's what if something happens to me today? Who's going to take care of them? Ultimately, they have rights on that.
If you have wealth and property and you leave it behind and you never wrote a will, how it should be divided, then your family might fight one another.
Exactly.
Might become enemies for that wealth you left behind. Why? Because their guardian or their father failed to write a will that I want my wealth to be divided according to the Islamic Sharia law.
Sure. Yeah.
If you wrote that down, that's it. The matter is, but if you didn't write it, everybody will claim whatever they want to claim.
That's it. You'll get
brothers will become enemies.
It happens.
Wealth, it happens often.
I'm sure those of you that are watching this video may know somebody, not within your own family, but heard stories where father or mother dies and then like a bunch of hyenas, brothers start fighting each other, and to the point where people will start poisoning each other, making
black magic in each other.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not easy. It's not easy, wallahi. But Islam has solutions for every crisis we might face on this earth. Yeah.
Sure.
But do we really go back to Islam as our main source for whatever crisis we're facing? That's a question mark.
Yeah.
Do you understand? But please, brothers and sisters in Islam, there is no excuse for you not to write a will. Write it in your own language. Now, alhamdulillah, big masajid, big Islamic centers in the UK, they have this service.
Sure.
and it's legal, okay? Charity organizations, Muslim charity organizations, they have these options.
Sure.
You pay a small fee for this service, very little fee, and you have your written, you have your will written, and inshallah ta'ala you've done your trust with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and time to time update it if
Sure.
you think there is a need for an update.
Sure. Jazakallah khair, Brother Lotfi. Thank you very much. Your knowledge has been very useful. I've learned something today, definitely, and I hope you have. So inshallah, join us at our next session. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.